The first thing we'll be working on here is the front piece of our dress, and this is the facing we had earlier cut. So now I want to place the facing on the front piece, right side facing each other. And you remember we added half an inch sewing allowance round the neckline while we were cutting. So now we are going to sew in that half inch all the way through. Now I'm done sewing the neckline, the front neckline. I've attached the front piece to the front facing, and whenever you're sewing on a curvy edge like we did for our neckline, it is necessary to put tiny notches. This helps your seam relax properly. That's just how it is done. So all around your curvy edges, whether it's a flare, a neckline, armhole, be sure to do this so that you can have your seam properly relaxed. Now let's sew our allowance alongside the front facing. We are going to top stitch the front facing while turning the allowance towards the front facing. So we'll be top stitching by 1/8 of an inch throughout the front neckline. And this is what we have at the front of our dress. So I'll just go through this whole process for each side of the back. But before then, make sure you give your neckline a proper press. Now this is our back piece with our back facing. So we'll go through the whole process again. We'll do that for each side of the back. Remember, we have two sides for the back because we have the zip allowance at the center back. So I've sewn my ½ inch allowance in at the neckline, and this is another method of creating notches. Just split through with your scissors close to your thread, but be sure not to cut through the thread. And now top stitch my facing by 1/8 of an inch. So this is what our back neckline looks like. Now we are done fixing our necklines, and this is our back and we have our front. The next thing we'll be doing now is to join the front and the back piece together at the shoulder. So now I'm just going to place my back piece for each shoulder, right side facing each other, and I'm going to sandwich the front in between the back piece and the back facing. And now we're going to sew that in by 1/2 inch. Remember, we added 1/2 inch at the shoulder, so we're going to sew in that 1/2 inch right back. So this is what we'll have on our shoulder. So I'll just do the same thing on the other shoulder. I'll sandwich the front in between the back piece and the back facing. If you have access to an overlocker or a serger, it would be nice to give your edges neat finishing. So or you can just sew in the edge of your facing. So here's what our work will look like after joining the shoulder. We have both the front and the back attached together. The next thing we'll be working on is to attach our sleeve. So first, you have to notch the center of your sleeve. This is just to help you know where it goes into the shoulder. So the part you notch must align with the shoulder line, and you're just going to sew the sleeve curve into the armhole curve at the front and the back. So you start from the shoulder and sew towards the front, then you go back to the shoulder and sew towards the back. But before attaching your sleeve, you need to fold in your sleeve. Remember, we added a hemming allowance of 2 inches to our sleeve, so I'll just give this a good press and sew in my allowance. Then I'll get to fixing my sleeve on my dress. So what I am doing here is to attach my front facing to the main front piece. I won't be doing this for the back just yet because I need the back facing to turn my zip in. So this is a hemming glue. It is sticky. It is also an interfacing that it can give your fabric some structure. So you can either do this, use a hemming glue and just cut stripes and place underneath your facing. Then you use a steam iron to press it in, and it just sticks your facing to the main clothes. You can also use needle and thread to tack your facing to the main clothes, but then this does not show any sewing outside, so it just makes it look a bit neater than using needle and thread. So right now I'm hemming in my sleeve, and I've folded and ironed in my allowance. So I'll just sew in by about 1/4 of an inch. So now this is our armhole, and we want to attach the sleeve. So we're going to place our sleeve on the shoulder line, the right side of the dress facing the right side of your sleeve, and I'm just making sure the notch I had created at the midpoint of my sleeve curve aligns with the shoulder of my dress. And now I'm attaching the sleeve to the armhole and sewing in by 1/2 inch. That's because we added 1/2 inch sewing allowance when we were cutting both the sleeve and the armhole of our dress. So I'm sewing from the shoulder all the way down to the front, then from the shoulder again towards the back. This is just to make sure that the midpoint of your sleeve aligns with the shoulder. This is how far we have gone with our shift dress. And the next thing we'll be doing is to attach our pocket. So from the base of your sleeve at the armpit, measure down 11 inches and mark on all the 4 sides of your dress. That's on the 2 sides of the front and at the 2 sides of the back. So I'm just marking 11 inches down. I'll do that all on all the 4 sides of my dress. Now I'm done marking 11 inches down from my armpit, and I'll just place my pocket flap with the longer side facing upward. So you don't want to place this wrongly. Make sure that your pocket is falling down. Remember I told you one side of the pocket is actually longer, so you are not doing this, but instead you're doing this. So the top of your pocket will be on the 11 inches mark you created, and you can just pin this down and move on to sew it in by 1 inch, because we have 1 inch allowance on the sides of our dress. So you're just going to sew it with the right side facing each other, the right side of the pocket facing the right side of the dress. You sew in 1 inch. Now I've sewn in my pockets, my pocket flap rather, right side facing each other at the back and the front of my dress. So once that is done, we'll move on to fixing our zip. Here I have a 24 inches zip, and I'm not going to be attaching the whole 24 inches all through, but once you can measure from your waistline 8 inches or 9 inches down, then you should be able to zip down and wear your clothes properly without any difficulty. So that's the edge of my dress, that's my back neckline, and I'll be fixing the zip on only the main piece. I've raised up my back facing, so I'll be attaching the zip on the main back piece, not the facing. I'll be leaving out the facing. So I'm just measuring what I have on my zip down, and like I said, you can just take like 8 inches down from your waistline and mark, then you sew in from that point downward. So that's what I'm marking here. So from this mark I made, I'm going to sew in my zip allowance till I get to the hem of my dress. So now we have an upper opening at the back for the zip, and the zip allowance will be sewn in on the lower part of the back piece. So that's what I'm just doing now, sewing in my zip allowance at the back, 9 inches below the waistline till I get to the hem of my dress. This is our center back, and the side we have just sewn in. So I'm not going to fix my zip on the facing, the neck facing. I'm not going to fix my zip. I will only work on the main clothes, here. So I'll start from the edge here. I'm going to place my zip this way. So note that this is the back of our fabric, and this is the joining here. I just want you to get this properly. This is the joining, the 1 inch sewing we did. So at the top of your fabric, just take your zip and place this way. You see this, there's a little iron at the top of your zip here. So that's like a stopper for your zip. It should be below, just below the edge here. So you're going to place this way. Remember, your zip allowance is 1 inch, so you should start at about 1 inch this way. So when you are sewing this top, be mindful of your needle hitting this. Just carefully sew it gently. Note that the right side of our zip is actually facing the right side of the cloth. So I'm just going to sew this in a little bit, then close it up, because it's actually easier to sew when your zip is closed up. So the reason I zip down before starting is to just allow me to escape this point of my zip. So I'll raise it up a bit and fix my slipper, put my needle back now as you sew your zip, be sure you're sewing close to the teeth. That's the plastic part of your zip, but don't climb on the zip, because then you won't be able to zip down your dress. So just sew as close as possible, but don't climb on the plastic part of the zip. So be patient, gradually do this. Be sure you're making straight seams so you can have a neat zip. So you continue sewing in your zip till you get below the joining. Remember the joining we did at our zip allowance, 9 inches below the waist. So you just continue sewing until you get there and below it, at least 2 inches below that top of your seam. Once you're done with one side of the back, you start sewing the second side from the bottom. So we started the first near the neckline, that's at the neckline, and this one will be starting at the bottom. Be sure to take the same allowance you took on the first side. And once you get to the top, you raise your needle bar and zip down so you can access that top edge of your zip properly. So be mindful of the metal so you don't break your needle, and back stitch once you are through, and we are done with the zip fixing. So this is what the zip will look like once you're done with this. Be sure to check your zip to be sure you haven't stepped on the plastic part of it. Just zip down and up again just to make sure you did it right. And once that is done, we're going to turn in the top of our zip, that's the free end of the zip, into our facing. So we'll just fold the facing and wrap this free end of the zip between the facing and the cloth. So we're going to sew in our zip allowance so that we can have a neat finishing at the top of our neckline. So once this part is completed, then you can use your hemming glue to stick in your facing to the back, or you can simply make use of your needle and threads to finish up the facing. So here's what the top of our back piece will look like once you have properly done that. So if you have a serger or an overlocker, you can use it on your armholes so that you can have a neat finishing, or it can be piped, or you just sew in your allowance. So the next thing we'll be doing is to join the front and back at the side. So first you need to pin in the two pieces together, that's the front piece and the back piece. Just take your dressmaker pin or any other pin you have, pin it in properly so they don't shift, and we're going to sew in our 1-inch allowance all around our dress from the sleeve to the hem. So from the sleeve to the pocket, we'll sew in 1 inch. When you get to the pocket, you take 1/2 inch all around the pocket flap. So remember, the two sides of the pocket now are together, and then you get back to your main cloth and sew in 1 inch all the way to the hem of your dress. Now we are done joining the sides of our dress together. And here is something you can do if you don't have an overlocker or weaving machine. You can pull in your sewing allowance for the back and the front. Just pull it into each other and sew down. So that way you can have nice edges without making use of a weaving machine or an overlocker. And here's what your edge will look like if you use this method to finish the sides of your dress. So now we are done joining our dress and we'll be working on the hemline. And remember the way we fitted in our hemming glue earlier on, so we'll be doing the same thing to the hem of our dress. You can as well make use of needle and thread to create blind hems, or you can just sew it in the way we did for the sleeve. So what I want to do now is to fold 2 inches in, 1 inch, then another 1 inch. Then I'm going to fit in my hemming glue in between and use a steam pressing iron to press it down and glue it down. Okay, so I'm pressing in my first fold and I'll make a second fold, press it in, then fit in my hemming glue. I just realized the part where I actually steamed my hemming glue isn't featured here, but you already saw how I did that on my neckline. So once I give this a second press, I'll fit the hemming glue in between and we are done with our dress. Already you have seen what the dress looks like on me. Why not recreate yours and let's see how far you can go with this. Remember, to fit in an hemming glue you need a steam press iron. And so thank you very much for watching, and if you have got any questions, let me know in your comments and I'll be sure to attend to it. Thank you.